Hello, heroes. In the first part of our two-part deep dive on matchmaking and competitive, we'll look at how matchmaking works under the hood and answer some outstanding questions around how MMR is determined and factored into the system. Ultimately, the goal of Matchmaker is to create as fair matches as possible across all game modes. We know matchmaking can be a source of frustration, especially in competitive, and we'd like to recognize it doesn't always feel like it's meeting its goal. In order to address your thoughts, we need to dissect the matchmaker and competitive systems separately before going into how they affect one another. In part 1, we talk about how the matchmaker works, some of the challenges we've faced, and some of the ways we've started to tackle those issues. Our
Oh my god, a
matchmaker is
Gaussian
designed to
distribution.
create balanced matches. To do that, we need some approximation of each player's skill. Everyone has an internal matchmaking rating, MMR, that's a numerical value to describe your skill relative to everyone else. However, MMR isn't an absolute value, meaning your MMR can change even if your personal skill stays the same. This could indicate the general population is getting better or worse compared to you. You can see this in the example below that displays player MMR in quick play, with most of us right around the middle of the curve.
Distribution.
Your MMR will rise over time if you improve your skill and win
MMR.
more games against players of your current MMR level. All our game modes, including competitive, only look at MMR when forming a match. We never use your outward-facing skill tier or division to form matches. Likewise, the rank you see in a player's profile isn't the same as their MMR. We only adjust
All game modes, including competitive, only look at MMR when forming a match. We never use your outward facing skill tier or division to form matches. Okay. Your outward facing skill tier or division should be based on your MMR, right? Likewise, the rank you see in a player's profile isn't the same as their MMR. It should be the same as their MMR as long as it is the system is reflecting it, right? Why would you have a rank that isn't based on the MMR of the player? We only adjust your MMR after you win or lose a game, or if you come back after not playing for a long time. Your MMR is unaffected when we lower your rank at the beginning of a season, and everyone in your matches has a similar MMR as you. Initial ranked matches can feel turbulent because many players return at the beginning of the season, and anything that changes the player population is going to affect the matchmaker. What's the point of lowering someone's rank then? Also, why wouldn't the rank be based on your MMR? Yeah, it applies to all their game modes. The fuck is this shit? So they're saying that your rank actually has nothing to do with your skill rating, your MMR rating internally. But it should. It literally should be based on that, right? What the fuck are they doing? What? And then they reduce your rank at the beginning of the season, but why would they do that if your MMR isn't going to change as well? That means, as far as the matchmaker is concerned, your initial rank reduction at the beginning of the season doesn't matter, which would explain why I feel like I'm technically being paired with people that are plat, but some of the players I'm playing against are definitely not plats, and they like you look at their profile and their fucking plats there too. So I don't really know what the fuck's going on here. Like, why would you make a rank that's different than MMR intentionally? Like, your rank is supposed to reflect your MMR. It's also important to remember that teammates are human. We don't always perform the same every game to game, even team fight to team fight. Is inherent variance in individual performance. Yeah, we're fleshy meat bags that the matchmaker needs the results of as many games as possible to get an accurate representation of your skill. It feels like they're doing two things here that are really fucking weird. I don't know. It looks like your rank would just be for show and has literally nothing to do with your skill. What? The rank you see in a player's profile isn't the same as their MMR. You only adjust your MMR after you win or lose a game, or if you come back after not playing for a long time. I mean, of course, I mean they have to get stats. So win or lose a game, that's like saying we only readjust your MMR after you play. Okay, yeah. Either whoever's describing this either doesn't understand what they're describing, or doesn't really completely understand what they're trying to do, uh, or they're intentionally trying to mislead people that are reading this. Your MMR will rise over time if you improve your skill and win more games against players of your current MMR level. So your MMR will only increase or decrease if you play against people of your current MMR level. So within a certain amount of variance of your current MMR will only adjust your MMR, which is not good at all because it doesn't take into account where people might be misplaced or wide swings in MMR where someone improves, like they go and play a different game and come back and they're much better at the game or worse. Fuck is this system? I mean, I actually like the fact that they hide your rank for seven games, or 20 7 wins or 20 losses. I actually like that they do that because it keeps people from hyper focusing on their own rank. But this feels really fucking convoluted.
Skill variation within groups. We love seeing you group up and have fun together because we believe Overwatch 2 is a game best shared with friends. Grouping up does, however, influence the matchmaker in a few different ways. When players group together, there's the possibility that the group has a larger skill difference than a match we'd typically like to make.
Yeah.
Those of you at the very highest levels might notice these skill differences more too because there's far fewer players at the very top of the MMR curve.
Or
We
bottom.
can't always avoid these types of matches, but we can make them feel better. These matches can often feel imbalanced if they create situations where there's a large disparity of skill within a single role between the two teams. For example, we might match a highly rated tank against a comparably lower rated tank, so even if the overall match is balanced, the competition between tanks feels very one-sided. We've got changes coming to the game over the next few months which will dramatically reduce these disparities.
How?
We'll try to find pairs of similarly
How without like literally giving them a crutch, so giving them increased health pools, damage, which would be dynamic difficulty adjustment, by the way, which they have a patent on, and I hope not.
rated players in each role when making a match. For support and damage roles, which have 2 slots, each player will be paired with one player on the opposite team. There will still sometimes be matches with a large range of differently skilled players, but in these cases,
They don't need to be mirror matched, by the way, with comparable roles. Once again, you'd have to weight the classes, which I'm sure they haven't done. You'd have to weight the classes because a tank, for instance, has a lot more weighting than, let's say, DPS or healer because there's one of them, and they have a significant amount of your team's stats in both healing, mitigation, damage, pressure in general, and that's something that needs to be weighted if you're gonna match them that way. In addition to that, with if you have like 2 healers on your team and 2 healers on the enemy team, you don't need to have mirror matches. You don't need to have mirror matches between them. You could actually have, you could weight these two with the same amount of skill between the two. So you could have a high and low here, and then like the average between those two guys over here.
Cases, the two teams will be more like mirror images of each other.
That's a bad idea.
However, even with these improvements, there will always be times when we make matches that have a skill disparity that isn't reflected in MMRs
Not very
because some
likely to
players in
happen.
the match aren't calibrated. We've seen this much more frequently since Overwatch 2 launched, and we welcomed a large influx of new players.
Yeah. Okay. Some players in the match aren't calibrated.
Overwatch 2 is a lot to learn. It's a fast, team-based hero shooter where players juggle the gameplay of a traditional FPS, the unique abilities of a diverse hero roster, and many different types of game modes and maps. We've tackled the learning curve from multiple directions to help ease new players into Overwatch 2. The most visible change was adding the first-time user experience at launch, but there's also an invisible change we've been working on in the background: better matchmaking for new players. We noticed that new players were losing their initial matches much more than they should have, and this trend wasn't leveling out enough by the time they'd played many more matches.
Well, you artificially reduce people's rating when they come back, although it's they set above when your rank is decreased at the beginning of the season, it doesn't influence the kind of players you're getting matched against, which is weird. Why would you decrease someone's outward rank, which isn't actually used for the matchmaker, to do something that should be influenced? It seems like the team that is here is different than the team was originally here. The team that was originally here made the outward facing, as they call it, the outward facing MMR system, or the rank for yourself, right? Which was supposed to be a reflection of your skill level. These guys came along and was like, well, let's make this other system where we can change it more dynamically without affecting this. And then they didn't understand why there were systems in place in the old rank. Let's say you D-rank, or you, what do they call it, deteriorate, basically for not playing a prolonged period of time, so you get matched against people that are lower rank, right? Because you're rusty. These guys didn't get the memo, so they aren't taking into account the deterioration, the degradation that you're supposed to have on your rank for not playing, right? And they're like, oh, hey, look at this problem when you come back. You're missing a bunch of matches because they aren't fucking using the old system. The fuck is this shit? These guys that made this new MMR system didn't even realize why this shit was in the old system. And then they're like, hey, I guess we got these problems we got to fix from the that we were encountering. But it was in the old system already. But they didn't even bother looking at it, apparently. So if you come back, you're not actually getting paired against people that are lower rank. According to what we're reading here, you're not getting paired against people lower rank. They're going to change that, but they haven't changed that. What? Yeah, that's why your rank depreciated or degraded, was because when you come back, you're not going to have this. It's not a punishment. You're not going to be around the same skill as you were when you left, more than likely. And then you got some fast matches where your rank can increase and decrease fast off. So, yeah. What the fuck? It seems like whoever was in charge of this old MMR system was fired or they left, and then the new guys came in, or there's a new group that came in that took things over, and then they just made another system, and then just kind of said whatever to the old system. Like your outward rank should be a reflection of your MMR. I don't know why it wouldn't be unless you don't play. I mean, once again, if you don't play comp, it's not going to change constantly, right? But if the moment you play comp, it should be exactly related to that. But they didn't say that. When you play comp, it should be basically your MMR. This explains the fucking weird shit that's going on with the ranking system right now.
The win rates of new players should be normally distributed, meaning most should be hovering around a 50% win rate, but instead, the distribution was skewed with new players losing
Oh shit,
at
that's
higher
why your rank
rates.
degrades.
This challenge is more difficult since the matchmaker has no initial data on a player's skill when they enter their first match.
I mean, it
We've
has
tried
it
to
from the
remedy
old
this
matches.
issue with two distinct changes.
I guess they aren't
First,
talking about
new
players coming back. They're
initially
talking about
started
absolutely brand new players. But I mean, that's easy to do. You just put them in the match with other players. That's why, by the way, when you play your first games, it takes you forever to find games because you should be matched against people that haven't played the game at all. We notice that the new players are losing their initial matches much more than they should have. How do you figure out what they should have if they don't have? So if you're talking about completely brand new players, not people coming back. If you're talking about completely brand new players, how do you know how much they should be winning their first matches? There's no data, so your assumption of how much they should win shouldn't exist at all, right? They're just going to, you put them at bronze and see if they steamroll, and then you move them up, right? You just make a fast-paced system for it. Challenge is most difficult since the matchmaker has no initial data. Yeah, so why the fuck? How do they know how much they should be winning and losing in the first place? Why would it be a 50-50 if you don't know what their skill is? You drop them to the bottom, and then you raise them up immediately, right?
At an MMR value slightly below average. You can think of it in terms of skill tiers around the lower divisions of silver. This was already below the center point of the player base's MMR distribution, but the new player win rate was still too low. We've since lowered the starting MMR to a rating equivalent to Bronze 5 and instantly saw huge improvements for new players with a sub 40% win rate.
Shit. Okay. I guess they assume they're going to be at the middle of the skill population, but that doesn't hold true for new players. The reason for that being they possibly have never played Overwatch, assuming they're in Smurfs. They have never played Overwatch before, so if your normal distribution of players, let's say, is around like what did they say, bronze or not bronze? Like if we look at the distribution here, like around maybe gold, probably where I am, gold or plat, right? Probably right around gold or plat. The majority of players, those are people that have been playing the game for a prolonged period of time. That's not going to be a normal player because obviously they don't know the basics of playing the game in and of itself. State of initial MMR change. Prize stats.
If you're playing with or against a new player in Overwatch 2, these games should now broadly be fairer. The second change we implemented was aimed at new players who did not belong at the initial MMR. Initial matches are weighted differently than standard matches because they increase and decrease MMR at a much higher rate than usual. We want to adjust a player's initial MMR as quickly as possible, because until their MMR is more properly calibrated, we're not able to make fair matches. However, this still meant that it took several games for players to get to where they belonged. To improve this, we added a streak modifier system that tracks a moving average of a player's win rate. When a player wins more than 50% of their matches, we start to increase their MMR faster.
Holy shit. This is like stuff that should be in their
the
system to
player's
begin with.
MMR value has them
They're
joining
just
fair
adding
matches,
this?
which corresponds to a 50% win rate. With this change, we've seen that new and returning players reach a 50%
It's like a
win rate
hysteresis
with
for a
much
fan,
fewer
guys.
matches than before. The faster we can calibrate a new player's MMR, the fewer unfair matches we'll create not just for that player, but for the
You
other
probably
9
could actually
players
just,
in the
it's
match.
almost identical to a fan curve
Overall,
for a system
we
and
think
temperature.
this was a huge improvement to the new player
Same
experience,
thing, where it ramps
which
up
in turn
fast
should
and then it
result
slows
in better
down and then
matches
it
for
will
everyone. There will be
start to
more
modulate right
information
around
on
the temperature
updates in
when
the
it gets
future,
there.
but until then, please keep sharing your feedback. It's our most valuable development resource.
Hysterectomy, we don't want that. Hysteresis. Phenomenon in which the value of a physical property lags behind the change in effect, causing it as an instance when magnetic induction lags behind the magnetizing force. Hysteresis is the dependence of the state of a system on its history. For example, a magnet may have more than one possible magnetic moment in a given magnetic field, depending on how the field changed in the past. So basically, when you have a temperature increase, right? A temperature increase, your fan has to increase really fast to begin with, right? To match the temperature. And then it slows down when it reaches the top. And a shitty fan curve will go up and down like this. It'll oscillate, and your fans will go like that, right? Because it goes up and down between the 2 points on the data curve. Hysteresis will actually make it so when it starts getting close to the temperature, the fan will plan off and use basically math. Use calculus for this, which I fucking hate calculus, but use calculus for this to kind of plane it off and make it a smooth line, right? It's the same way. It's the same way with MMR in a video game where you have people that show up and they do really good performance-wise, personal performance-wise. They do really good. So you ramp up their MMR, and then when they do the next game and they do really bad, and you go down, and you go like this, and you do one of the waves, and then it planes out, right? And the very fact that this hasn't existed in their game in the first place, this sounds like new systems they're putting in. Either means it was in the old systems, they don't once again understand the old systems. This whole part here, guys, internal MMR, this whole part here really makes me question what's happening at Blizzard right now. Right now, they have basically two different systems from the sound of it, and either the new group that's doing the new MMR system doesn't understand the old MMR system, or the old MMR system, I don't know, they just have two different MMR systems, or the old MMR system, they just decided to replace it, or it didn't have good things in the first place. The old MMR system seemed to do a relatively good job, so yeah, it's like they just replaced it and they're trying to make a job for themselves or something. Like right here, it honestly seems like they don't understand the old MMR system or something. They just recreated what was already in the game and just named it something else. They recreated basically ranking in the game and called it internal MMR now, I guess, for lack of a better word, for their own system. Hysteresis. Yeah. Mirror balancing, which they're falling back on, is last-ditch effort to balance the game, which they don't completely understand. What a convoluted mess, guys. Here's the main question I have. When your MMR is correct, you should win 50% of your games. Your comp SR isn't taken into consideration when matchmaking you. So even though Blizzard has messed up multiple times now and placed you in Bronze 5 when you're a Diamond player, you're still being placed in Diamond MMR matches and winning 50% of your games. So how on earth are you supposed to climb? You're not being placed in Bronze games, you're in Diamond MMR games. You're not winning more than you lose because your MMR is correct. And every season, Blizzard will derank you, artificially lowering your SR for no reason. It doesn't change your MMR. It seems the only thing they have to fight is fight this bonus SR on your first games of the season to help you underank. Yeah, this is fucking weird. This is some really fucking weird bullshit, guys. I'm not gonna lie. This is some convoluted shit. And it seems like there's an echo chamber going on in Blizzard where they have a couple people working on this that are just head nodding to themselves that they're doing the right thing without completely like maybe someone that's unqualified for the job they have right now and they're head nodding. They have a basic understanding of stats, but don't really understand how they're placing people against each other and how players are supposed to level. It doesn't make any sense. Like they have two different systems set up. They have your visible rank and then they have internal MMR. This visible rank should be your MMR at the end of the day. And it's not. Even if it updates slow, it should be based on your actual skill level, not on some fictitious system they have. So why the fuck is this different than this? Why is this different than this? I don't know. Obviously, if you don't play comp, you're not going to have an update on this, right? But they could still update it because this should be a direct reflection of your internal MMR. It should be a direct reflection of your internal MMR, and they can weight the two too. So how well your personal skill is, as well as how well you do in a team setting. So how much you win the games and how much you influence the games is going to matter a lot. This sounds like you need to have an incredibly complex system for what's going on here, and it sounds like they do not and they don't understand it. This is fucking weird, guys. This is absolutely weird as shit. And like all you have to do to figure this out is read this section here, which the other parts make sense. This makes no sense. It's like they had an internal, they had another development team that came in and took over and tried to make a new MMR system for Overwatch 2, basically, which is why it's so fucking weird and broken. And in doing so, basically fucked up a lot of different things, and they're trying to band aid the two systems together to make them work. And in doing so, they aren't doing anything well. And at the same time, it looks like their old system isn't as good as the new system, and then they're encountering problems that the old system made up for. And like skill variations within groups, this is the whole reason you couldn't match against. Like if you had a complete pre-made, you couldn't play against. You had to play against other pre-mades. That's why in Overwatch 1 you had to play in duos, right? Because if you played in threes, fours, or fives, like it would put you in a position where you'd have to play against other groups of the same size because it really fucks with MMR. Because it's not like being in a group does a couple different things. One, you care a lot more about the game. You're willing to work with your friends more. We aren't even talking about skill here. You're willing to work with your friends more. You understand what kind of player they are and who they are, stuff that you get basically on a team level, right? You start talking about an actual team. So esports, you start getting this on actual teams. And then at the same time, like you have your skill level. This is your group behavior is another entire set of like variables. How well they work together is another set of variables, and they will perform much better regardless of their skill level. They'll perform much better because they're working in a team atmosphere with people they understand, hopefully understand much better than a rando hopping in the group. More than likely, more than a rando hopping in the group. Yeah. And that's why you couldn't play against teams in the old. And maybe this group thought, hey, I don't know what it's like now in comp, but hey, you can just play against complete pre-mades now, which would be insane. And then this part about setting up for players for success, yeah. I guess this is purely about new players in the game, and it is very easy to see when they're placing right. You just move them down, And they just did this? This game's been out for 6 years. What the fuck's going on here? Like, this very much makes me think that this is a new MMR system. This is Overwatch 2 MMR system, and they have rank and they have internal MMR, and these two are not the same, and they're trying to internally bandage the two together. And Overwatch 1 just had your rank, right, which was a reflection of your MMR, which is a reflection of your MMR. And it seems like there's a new development team that is trying to band-aid the two together, and they're basically coming into the same problems. This is like the game just came out. They're encountering problems that the Overwatch 1 rank system already encountered and tried to fix, right? And they're just trying to make a new version of that, which is why the game is so fucked up right now. This is really weird. Just like reading this, all you have to do is read this and try to parse it. This part right here in particular, where they're basically stating that there's two different ranks in the game. There's internal MMR, and then your visible rank. And then they're even saying that this visible rank is not a reflection of your MMR, even though it should be. I don't know why it wouldn't be. That basically means, what's the point of having the badges in the first place if it doesn't actually reflect your performance? The ranks don't matter, guys. The points don't matter. The ranks don't care. It doesn't. It's just all, yeah. Holy shit, guys. Fucking weird stuff. Very, very weird. And like I said, it feels an awful lot like they either fired the old guys or I don't know. They just made a new system where they fired the old guys and they weren't around to help with the new system, or something's going on here. They definitely have two systems going on here though. And one is the old one from Overwatch 1 and one's the new one in Overwatch 2, and they don't communicate between each other very well at all. This is a pretty big fuck up for an esports game, guys. This is a pretty big deal. And you can tell immediately, this is stuff that should have been encountered 6 months after the launch of Overwatch 1. We're roughly 6 months, well, not really. We're like 3 months after the launch of Overwatch 2, and they're running into the same shit that they found out in Overwatch 1. So, yeah, it really does feel like this is... They're talking about this not in past tense of what stuff they've done in the past, that these are things that we've already ran across in Overwatch 1, we've already dealt with. They're talking about this as if this is brand new, which makes me, once again, this has to be a brand new system, and these are developers that aren't experienced because they would have already known this exists and programmed it into Overwatch 2. So these are new devs, it's a new system, and they don't know, they're running into teething issues they did with Overwatch 1. And they're basically recreating the wheel, for some strange reason, same company, recreating the same wheel they made in Overwatch 1, and they're trying to act like they're just making it better when in fact it's not really better. So, yeah, I don't know, maybe at some point they're going to get rid of the ranks and replace them with MMR badges? I don't know. You know, like, what's the point of MMR? What's the point of your rank, excuse me, if it doesn't reflect your MMR? The whole reason people talk about their rank is because it's supposed to be reflection of their MMR. And you could even make two ranks, once again, for like team. You could make a bunch of different reasons for like team, how well you work with the team, and then your own personal performance, which should all be weighted. There should be a weighted system in the background here, and there appears to be not anything like that. And even we just talked about on Reddit, the post I made, where you have tanks, will, for instance, will have a different amount of weighting as far as their power influence on the game will be different than a DPS or a support, depending on the MMR they're at. Where you get the lower levels, having like one person that is very good will make a huge difference, especially if they're playing a powerful class like a tank, because tank is just stat heavy. It's just a lot of HP, a lot of damage, a lot of mitigation, a lot of ability to change the flow of the game that other classes don't have. It doesn't matter how good you think you are. There's only so much you can do when you're, let's say, playing DPS against a really good tank and the rest of your team's potatoes, right? Yeah, same if you're a support. More so unless you're playing like something like DPS Moira or something, right? And it's really just fucking with someone's backlines. Very weird system, guys. We're going to make a highlight of this here in a second. Yeah, this is... yeah, we'll make a highlight of that. Pretty crazy. It gives some internal insight onto what's going on in their studios right now.